motion as amended passed.
Members' motion with no legislative effect. Mr. Lee Chun-keung will move a motion on addressing the needs of the middle class. Mr. Frankie YICK will move an amendment on the motion and the amendments. Later, I will first call upon Mr. Lee Chun-keung to speak and move the motion. The Council will proceed to a joint debate on the motion and the amendments. After that, I will call upon Mr. Frankie YICK to speak, but he may not move the amendments at this stage. The joint debate now begins. Members who wish to speak, please press the Request to Speak button. I now call upon Mr. Lee Chun-keung to speak and move the motion. Thank you, President. I move the motion as printed on the agenda be passed. Hong Kong is experiencing a period of recovery after the epidemic. We are at the cusp of the announcement of the new budget. We have to pay attention to the needs of the middle class. President, in the past, the middle class was the growth engine of society. They had much consumption power. Today, many middle class people told me that they are under huge burden. The young people cannot afford to buy a house and there is no upward mobility. Middle-aged, middle-class people have to take care of the elderly parents and young children. Some of them are even averse to the idea of giving birth. Now, for those in the business sector, they are facing ever more stress in the business environment. Now, for the retired middle-aged people, they find that there is not much left in the MPF account. The return rate is only 3 or 4%. It is much lower than the inflation over the past decade, that is 20%. Now, they are only relying on their life savings. Now, for the middle class, after claiming health insurance, the premium would be hiked up by the insurers. They could not afford it, and then they have to seek public health care, which also add to the plight of the public health care system. The Liberal Party urged the government to offer more assistance to the middle class. Now, the middle class is a term that has received much misunderstanding. Many people may think that middle class people are earning a decent income. However, they have to pay heavy tax and they are receiving insufficient support from the government, and they also face housing pressure as well as an adverse economic environment. They are paying a lot for their children's education, and they are feeling helpless. They have very little expendable income, and they are even worse off than grassroots families receiving government assistance. Now, according to a survey, the expenditure to income ratio for middle class people is as high as 40%. They cannot save up much. As a result, they are less resilient to hardships. Now, we are hearing terms like poor middle class or middle class who are living from hand to mouth. These are the sandwich class, and they have been neglected by the government. Hong Kong's middle class people are used to the idea of relying on themselves. Some of them are even working 2 or 3 jobs just to earn a decent income and enjoy upward mobility. Now, 30 years ago, the median income for university graduates are the same as today. That is $17,000. In 30 years' time, it has not risen. Now, if you look at McDonald's, the price of a McDonald's meal, it has been increased from $28 to $48. The rise in consumption prices are outpacing the increase in income. The middle class people cannot afford to buy their own house. No wonder many young people are choosing to lie flat and refuse a pay rise. Now, it seems that the middle class people are living an enviable life, but their plight the stress are huge. Now, with the interest rate hike, they have to pay $20,000 or $30,000 in interest every month to the banks. They even face the risk of falling into negative equity. Let me give you another example of the plight faced by the middle-class families. Now, the median income for household in Hong Kong, for an individual in Hong Kong, is $28,000. Now, it seems that a middle-class household is earning more than that, but is that true? If there are 2 children in the family, one in primary school and one in kindergarten, and there are also parents to take care of, you can tell how much they have to pay each month. Now, $20,000 for the rent and also $10,000 for the healthcare expenses for the parents, and then the tuition fees and miscellaneous expenditure for the children, and then $10,000 for food and others. So altogether, $60,000, not to mention hiring a foreign domestic helper, as well as the utility fees, management fees, and also expenditure on clothing. They may very well fall into the red. Now, if it is so unfortunate that anyone in the family has fallen sick, then the expenditure would be increased, not to mention the insurance premium or going on a trip. The stress is just huge. These are the realities faced by middle-class people. Now, in face of these pressure, the middle-class people really need the government to offer them with short, medium, and long-term assistance. The Liberal Party stresses that back in 2017, we already moved a motion in the Legislative Council to actively study the establishment of a middle-class commission. It was supported by most members in the Legco. However, the government has been sitting on its hands. The establishment of a middle-class commission is necessary. There must be a clear definition for the middle class so that there can be targeted statistics. With these objective statistics, the government can truly have a grasp of the plight of the middle class, and then there can be targeted policy measures on economy, industry development, job opportunities, taxation measures, self-education, healthcare, so on, to offer more help to the middle class from a policy level. These measures will be flexible in helping the middle class. We have to bolster the middle class, which is the core of our society. We have to give them upward mobility. Outside Hong Kong, in the recent years, there is a theory of a M-shaped society. That is, there are more and more poor and rich people, but a shrinking middle class, just like a M-shaped society. It is a shame that the government has been telling us that we have a low tax regime, and there are petty tax rebates or raise concessions for the middle class, but that's it. Today, I'm moving this motion to pick members' brain on how to help middle class better. Thank you.
現在嘅代議議題係
And I'll put the question to you that Mr. Lee Chun-keung's motion be passed. Mr. Frankie YICK. President, prices continue to shoot up at the start of the new year, and the middle class is the hardest hit. Now, the middle class is called the sandwich class. It's not as well-off as the rich, but it's not as poor as the poor. They rely on themselves, but then they pay taxes, but they get a few benefits and welfare. And the Liberal Party has always been bearing in mind the needs of the middle class. In 2017, my colleague, Mr. Hon LEE Chun-keung, moved a motion on the middle class. It's been 6 years, but government still does not have definition for the middle class, and there are no policies specifically for the middle class. So my colleague, Mr. Lee Chun-keung of the Liberal Party, is again moving this motion on the middle class because we want people to see the difficulties faced by the middle class. In 2017, the Liberal Party, in 2012, the Liberal Party asked the government to set up a middle class commission so that we could have a coordinated approach in formulating policies for the middle class and address the needs. and it's to promote their upward mobility, but the government's never taken on board the suggestion. So far, we still do not have any policy specifically for the middle class. For the middle class who have to support their parents and their children, they have heavy financial burden. Some of them are actually not able to make savings. They use up all their money every month, and they have no savings for the rainy days. Now, people are now paying more attention to their diet and to their fitness, so people are living longer. So the middle class don't just take care of their parents, but grandparents. In the past 3 years, there have been some tax concessions for the middle class, but these are not standing measures. The economy is poor this year, but prices remain high. Many people don't get enough tax concession. Now, this year the tax concession is meager. Now, the financial secretary said he would just need several years to achieve a balanced budget. Now, as the global economy improves, then the government will no longer have a deficit. So that's why for tax concessions for the middle class to support their grandparents, parents, and children, there should be more of that. To lessen the burden of the middle class. Now, there are many over 300,000 foreign domestic homes in Hong Kong. Some say that there are more expenses involving FDH that adds to their financial burden. Now, on average, each month the spending is some $6,000 to $7,000 for FDH. Now, we don't have enough manpower in Hong Kong. The government should consider the Liberal Party's suggestion to offer tax concession for hiring FDH, because then more women will be able to join the job market and address our manpower shortage. Now, there is also a declining birth rate. In the policy address last year, there is announced that there will be a $20,000 cash reward for newborn infants, but then the scheme only lasts 3 years. And there's a survey that shows that it costs some $280,000 on average for supporting a child. By the time the child is 26 years old, some $6 million would have been spent. So we need to lessen the burden on middle-class parents. That's why we propose a progressive tax allowance for dependent children. That means more children one has, then more tax concessions one enjoys. Now, for an education, we have now this education voucher, but then for kindergartens, but then that's not enough to get. The Liberal Party should consider the pre-education education voucher scheme, and there should be a voucher scheme for non-subsidized kindergartens and non-subsidized primary and secondary schools, so middle-class parents will have more flexibility in choosing the right school for their children. My colleague, Mr. Tommy Cheung, is going to speak further on that. Now, we need measures to support the middle class, and they should not just be limited to what the Liberal Party has suggested. Now, if any measures could help lessen the financial burden on the middle class and promote their upward mobility, the Liberal Party will support it. So I hope the government will face up to the needs of the middle class. Thank you.
Undersecretary for Financial Services and the Treasury. President, first of all, I would like to thank Mr. Lee Chun-keung for proposing the motion on addressing the needs of the middle class, and Mr. Frankie YICK for proposing an amendment to the motion, so that we can exchange views with members on the needs and challenges faced by the middle class. In his 2023 policy address, the chief executive mentioned that the government's policy objective is to create a community with vibrant economy where everyone can enjoy life while living and working in peace and contentment. The middle class plays an important role in different sectors and professions in society. However, as we pointed out in our reply to the oral question raised by Mr. Lee Chun-keung in the council meeting on the 6th of December last year, middle class is a loosely defined term with no universal definition. The term middle class generally refers to one's economic background, academic qualification, income or set level, while it may also reflect one's lifestyle and values. Although there is no objective criterion to define middle-class individuals or households, the government has always attached importance to the needs of the middle class. The government has been formulating policies and measures to benefit people from all walks of life, including, of course, the middle class in the eyes of the members. Today's motion focuses on the needs of the middle class and touches on an extensive range of policy areas. Members' concern cover various issues including birth, aging, and illness, along with livelihood issues such as basic necessities and education. To better address members' concerns, Undersecretaries of the Housing Bureau, the Health Bureau, and the Labor and Welfare Bureau will take part in the debate and respond to issues under their respective policy portfolios. While the overall economy of Hong Kong is still under recovery, we fully understand that members of the public may feel a heavy burden over their shoulders. The government adopts a proactive attitude in helping members of the public, including the middle class, and paying attention to their needs. In fact, it is our duty to do so. In order to understand and address the needs of the public, it is important to open more communication channels. Consultation for the 2024-25 budget commenced on the 17th last month. The SAR government would like to listen to the views of the public so as to formulate appropriate measures to respond to the needs of different groups in the community. My colleagues in other policy bureaus and I will listen carefully to members' speeches and respond to them later on. President, I so submit.
Mr. Ronald Chen. President, while people have various definitions for the middle class, but then we all agree that the middle class plays an important role in the economic structure of our society. They are an important force for the development of the economy and so on. Now, the middle class face a heavy burden supporting the parents and the children, and then there are high healthcare costs, property prices, and so on. The middle class also pay the most tax, are the biggest body that pays tax in Hong Kong, but then they pay a lot of taxes with little benefits. And for the existing measures for the public, usually they are non-means tested measures such as transport subsidy schemes or free primary and secondary education, subsidized university education, public healthcare system, and so on. But then there are also various tax allowances for supporting parents, children, and so on. There are also other relief measures such as electricity tariff subsidy, on rate subsidy, and so on. For all these support measures benefit also the middle class. But then most of these measures cannot really address their actual needs. So there is not enough support for the middle class, and that's why they feel neglected. The chief executive has said that there's need to take various measures to improve the quality of living in Hong Kong. We need to support the high quality development of Hong Kong. And then the policy address also suggested that there have to be appropriate measures for different sectors of the community to respond to their needs. But then for the middle class, they have to maintain their competitiveness at work. They have to consider the schooling needs of the children. They have to pay for the healthcare of their parents and also support them through retirement. And so they have heavy burden. That's why I'm grateful to Mr. Lee Chun-keung for moving this motion so we could talk about the needs of the middle class. I think the community should review the challenges and difficulties faced by the middle class. There must be suitable and targeted support for them. We need to address their needs so they could overcome the challenges they face. Now, for the middle class, they take very seriously the development of the children. They want their children to have good education so that there is strong foundation built for the children. Now, that's why for the middle class, education expenses are heavy. Will the government consider some new form of new tax allowance for education expenses? And for retired people, they have to live on their savings. Now, apart from the old age living allowance, the middle class elderly are not eligible for other government assistance. And many have suggested, including Liberal Party, that middle class commission be set up to take care of the needs of the middle class. I keep an open mind on that. With rising commodity and property prices, the burden on the middle class is increasing. Yes, the middle class may have high income, but at the same time, they also have heavy expenses. They have to pay taxes as well. So there has to be an there has to be some support measures for the middle class. For example, the interest rate is rising, and so the middle class has heavy mortgage burden. Then shouldn't we provide lift the tax allowance for mortgage payment? And then the middle class need to keep improving themselves and add value to themselves before they could face off the challenges in the workplace. So the government should also consider raising the tax allowance for continuous education, or the government could provide more professional courses for the middle class to receive professional certificates or qualifications, and that will allow them to have better development opportunities, or career opportunities rather. Now, what is healthy is olive-shaped society, so the government needs to do more to meet the needs of the middle class, and then we could build a healthy and stable society. Thank you. Mr. Duncan Chiu. President, I speak in support of the motion of Mr. Lee Chun-keung to consider the needs of the middle class, to address the needs of the middle class. If the middle class face a lot of challenges, they have to pay mortgage, they have to take care of their parents and children. There are huge daily expenses for them. So that's why the government needs to give them more policy support. And as for Mr. Frankie Yick's amendment, I do not agree to some of that. For example, adjusting salaries tax downwards, I am worried that may not bode well for our taxation system. It won't be good for our long-term development. As for tax allowance for hiring foreign domestic helpers, then we have to consider where we draw the line. If we say one employer employs many FTH, and then this employer will benefit much from FTH tax allowance, and it won't be fair to others who can't even afford an FTH. Now, I have submitted my proposals to the Financial Secretary for, during his consultation on the next budget. I suggest that we have to keep to the simple tax, low tax regime, but then there are various ways to generate new revenues and make savings. Because our economy is slowing down and the prospects are not certain, if we just lower the salaries tax, many people will welcome that, but then it may only cause more problems to our economy, and the government will have less revenue. That's why if we want to lower salaries tax, we need to think about that very carefully. I agree the government needs to pay more attention to the needs of the middle class. They are called the sandwich class. They are under immense pressure, and young couples may not even want to have children. Now we have a low childbirth rate in. There were only 32,000 births in 2021. So a low birth rate and an aging population are the main challenges faced by the government. That's why in a policy address last year, there were various measures announced to support childbirth. And the Finance Committee will be considering the funding proposal for the incentive scheme for newborn babies, which is $20 per newborn baby, and also there will be addition of extension of after school care services. And then there will be priority for family of newborns, for public housing allocation and so on. So all these measures will encourage childbirth. I support them. But then many middle-class families say at the same time, even if there will be more community childcare services, there is still strong demand, so demand still outstrips the supply. Now, many women want to go to work because they can contribute to the family's income, and at the same time they could unleash their potential. But many women have to stay home because they need to take care of the children, and they could only take up part-time jobs from time to time. So I hope the government will also consider this issue. For childcare services, the government needs to do a comprehensive survey, and then we know what resources we have. And we need to make sure that there is sufficient childcare services in all districts, and then women could rejoin the workforce. I think that's more useful than offering tax allowance for FDH, and that will help to address our manpower shortage as well. As for the proposal to set up a middle-class commission, I have some reservations here. If we set up a commission for the middle class, should it work just on a short-time basis? It shouldn't be a standing commission, perhaps, because there are many pressing issues that require targeted policy solutions. Only then could we really help the middle class, and then only then can such a commission work well. Thank you.
Mr. Sunny Tang. President Xi said in his speech after the 19th National Congress that the nation has to enhance the sense of gain, belonging, and security of the people. We must continuously meet the aspiration to have a better life. Different strata of society are facing different challenges. The government must, through policy measures and community building, meet the needs of various strata in society. We have a fiscal deficit and the global economic situation is uncertain. We have to make sure that resources are well spent. We can't afford to splash money around in offering cash subsidies. We have to make sure that every dime counts. For the middle class, the most urgent help required is not cash allowance, but to help them address the real issues they face. The middle class is the mainstay of society. We have to recognize their contribution to the economy. In recent years, there are three major challenges faced by the middle class. That is property purchase, high living cost, and also lack of upward mobility. The government has been adopting a multi-pronged approach in increasing land and housing supply and gradually stabilizing home prices in Hong Kong. I believe that the government will continue to do that to help people meet their housing needs. It is not easy for the middle class to buy private property, and most of them are not eligible for the lucky draw in buying a subsidized sales flat. So we have to enrich the housing ladder and give them more options. Now, with the easing of the speculation in the property market, the BPA thinks that we have to withdraw all the demand-side management measures so that the middle class can have an easier time buying a flat. Second, we have to roll out more starter homes projects to increase the supply of private housing. And also we have to increase the supply of subsidized sales flats and the PR and PRH so that the housing ladder becomes healthier. This will benefit everyone in Hong Kong. Now, with a shrinking workforce as well as an increasing cost of living in Hong Kong has been ever on the rise. It is expensive to eat and shop. Now, according to a survey, the cost of living in Hong Kong ranks the 5th highest in the world. Mr. Sunny Tang, please continue. In my opinion, the government must actively interfere in lowering cost of living. In Singapore, for example, in the 1970s, with the unionist core, the government and the unions forged a massive supermarket network with cheap commodities. They imported a wide range of products from more than 100 countries so that the citizens can buy necessities at a low price. We can learn from them. We can adopt a cooperation society model and introduce cheap products at a reasonable price from other places. Now, INT is important to enrich upward mobility for the middle class. We have to support the middle class people to learn about the latest developments in the INT community. Through the Continuing Education Fund, we have to encourage the middle class to take VPAT programs to help them move upward. We have to encourage the middle class to have a broader horizon and look beyond Hong Kong to the GBA as well as the nation as a whole. This will enrich the career prospects for the middle class. I hope the government will continue to be in touch with people's pulse and understand the real needs of various strata of society and enhance the sense of gains, happiness, and security of people in Hong Kong. Thank you. Dr. Loh Wai Kwok. President, first of all, I thank Mr. Lee Chun-keung for moving the original motion and Mr. Frankie YICK for his amendment. The original motion is aligned with the tenets of the BPA. Many of our constituents are the middle class, and we care about them a lot. Every year in our submission to the government, we mention the middle class a lot. What does middle class mean? Well, there is not a universal definition. The academic or think tanks classified middle class in accordance with the amount of assets they have. According to a survey, an olive-shaped society is a society with the middle class as a mainstay and a narrower wealth gap. It will serve to address the controversy and grudges in society, and it will help to stabilize society. Now, starting from the 1970s, Hong Kong's economy developed rapidly, and there was a transformation from a manufacturing economy to a tertiary industry-focused economy. There was much room for upward mobility, and many people had the chance to move upward in society in terms of their standings. Beginning in the 21st century, because of keen competition in the region, our competitive advantage has diminished. And also because of the opposition forces in the society, development's progress has been halted. I witnessed the filibustering in this council, and also in 2019, there was the blackleg violence, plus the epidemic. Our economy has been stinted. Now, the expansion of the management class in society has slowed down, and the middle class is facing ever more pressure in life. Now, the plight faced by the middle class is a long-standing one. There are deep-rooted issues behind this. The middle class is the pillar of our society. It is pragmatic to give support to the middle class. It will help Hong Kong stay prosperous. But the topic is wide. The BPA supports the idea of establishing a middle-class commission comprising not just government officials, but also experts and professionals who are familiar with the topic. The commission will be tasked to formulate policy measures to help the middle class to move upward. Now, these should be the terms of reference of the Commission. It should define the term middle class and set indicators. It should collect and analyze statistics regularly for formulation of policies. It should pay attention to the demographic as well as the situation of the economy to set a target in expanding the ratio of middle class in Hong Kong with a goal to expand the ratio to 50% in 10 years' time. The government should also tie in with the 8 centers positioning laid down under the 14th Five-Year Plan, as well as tie in with the GBA developments and Belt and Road to enhance Hong Kong's advantages. We should develop our advantageous professional services so as to move towards a diversified and high value-added economy. we have to increase the number of middle to senior management positions in the business sector to create more upward mobility opportunities for the middle class. Concerning the difficulty of home purchase, we should increase land supply and housing supply, and we should also review our housing ladder and pay attention to the home aspiration of young families. There should be targeted supports for them. For example, relaunching an enhanced starter home mortgage program. There should also be housing units suitable for young families which are pitched at a reasonable price. Thank you. Mr. Chen Pui-leung. Thank you, President. In addressing the needs of the middle class, we have to understand what middle class means. However, there is not a universal definition for middle class in the international community. Now, in Hong Kong, we usually pack the term middle class with education attainment, property ownership, and income. Survey shows that to qualify as a middle class person, you have to have $5.9 million in liquid assets. The definition of middle class is fluid throughout times. But undeniably, the middle class has contributed a lot to the development of Hong Kong. At the same time, they face immense pressure in house purchase, family care, and children education. There has been insufficient support for the middle class. There is a downward earnings mobility for the middle class in Hong Kong. We have to pay attention to that. In his amendment, Mr. Frankie YICK proposed introducing a progressive child tax allowance as well as relaxing the restrictions on the dependent parents or dependent grandparents allowance. I support them. Now, the declining birth rate issue is being addressed by the government in the form of the newborn baby bonus as well as priority housing allocation for families with newborn babies. But we must be more aggressive. Besides encouraging childbirth, we must encourage families to give birth to more children. I said the same to the Financial Secretary. Starting from the second child, there should be a progressive tax deduction for every additional child born. There should be an increase in $20,000 at each level. Now, for a family with 3 children, the tax allowance ceiling should be $620,000. It would incentivize families to give birth. Now, it is also stressful to take care of elderly parents, especially when family sizes are smaller in contemporary times. Usually, the parents will be cared for by 1 or 2 children only. Now, the dependent parent allowances were proposed in 2018. However, inflation has reached 11% over the past 5 years. I urge the Financial Secretary to review the tax allowance for dependent parents to take care of the middle class. Now, middle class people are also eager to plan for their retirement. They have high aspiration in terms of their life in retirement. However, the government only focuses on giving elderly care services to the grassroots people. Now, for the middle class people with a need of a retirement package, aging in the community should be an option for them, and also cross-boundary elderly care should be made available to them as well. In order to make the community more favorable for elderly care, the government should establish a certification system for elderly care facilities in the Greater Bay Area to reassure the middle class. The government should also work with insurers in the mainland in developing annuity or elderly health care products. For those who have purchased these products, there should be tax allowances. Now, people say that the middle class are wealthy enough to ride out the storm. However, no matter how well off they are, they need policy support. I urge the government to pay attention to the needs of the middle class and offer targeted support for them. This will alleviate their burden and enhance their sense of happiness. I shall submit. Thank you.
洪議員。
Mr. Chan Xiu-hong. President, I speak in support of the motion proposed by Mr. Lee Chun-keung on addressing the needs of the middle class and the amendment proposed by Mr. Frankie YICK. The welfare policy of the government focus on the disabled and elderly people, but there is a lack of support for middle class people. When the economy prosper, the middle class is glad to shoulder more responsibility to contribute to the society. Over the past years, the pandemic undermined the economy of Hong Kong and the global economy, and with the effect arisen from the geopolitical situation, the economy of Hong Kong is subject to downturn. The middle class is faced with difficulties in their lives, and we need to address the needs of the middle class. President, middle class is the mainstay of the society, and they contribute to the financial and reserve of the government. They are the cornerstone of the society. The definition of the middle class is very loosely defined. There is not a universal one. Some reports point out that members of the public in Hong Kong think that as long as we own $5.9 million of liquid asset, we can be considered middle class. But as for OECD, they define middle class as households earning between 75% and 200% of the median national income. Adopting the statistics of the CNSD in Hong Kong, for households conducting economic activities, the median income is $50,000. So if we adopt the definition of OECD, the middle class is household earning $37,500 to $100,000. The middle class paid large amount of tax but enjoyed few welfare benefits. They have to pay a variety of taxes and fees. The difficulties faced by the middle class is comparable to that of the grassroots families, and they are faced with property cost as well. According to statistics, housing expenditure accounts to about 44% of the household owning a property. That is higher than 11.5% of the housing expenses of grassroots families, as it's difficult to pay mortgage and it's also expensive to rent houses. And with the downturn of the housing market, a lot of middle-class families are holding negative assets. The middle class has to cater to the needs of their parents and their children. The government should formulate policy to benefit different strata of the society. I hope that the budget promulgated next month can meet the needs of different stratum of society by providing tax concessions and allowance to alleviate their needs. I have been proposed this to the government. Hopefully, 8% of the salary tax can be reduced, capped at $110,000, and introduce a progressive child allowance. For the first child, $150,000 can be reduced, and for the second child, $300,000. For the third child, $450,000. And the dependent parent and dependent grandparent allowance should be increased, and we should also provide tax deduction for employing foreign domestic helpers. More importantly, a vibrant and diversified economy is the key for upward mobility of middle class. Over the long term, the government has to invest in the future and diversify industry and expedite the development of INT so that we can make a bigger pie for the economy of Hong Kong so that different groups of people can move upward. President, I so submit. Mr. Lam Chun-sing. Thank you, President. In the union progress, we see a number of doctors' unions and architects' unions. They are middle class. So even middle class people have to organize unions to improve their lives. There are a number of senior civil servants who are considered middle class. 2 years ago, in the the pay trend indicators is 2.7%, but 7.26%. But eventually, the salary raise was only 2.5%. They want a higher salary, but members of the public think that it's unreasonable for them to seek higher salary because they are paid very well already. But senior civil servants are managers, so they have no choice but to accept the level of raise. The government once said that the definition of middle class is someone who drinks coffee and watches French movies. I disagree with that. That shows that the government is trying to evade their responsibility and ignore the needs of the middle class. According to the OECD, middle class is defined as households earning between 75% and 200% of the median national income. According to the government latest statistics, in the third quarter of last year, the monthly household income is about $30,000. According to this definition, for household earning $22,500 to $60,000, they are considered middle class. Some people think that this definition is too broad, but there are people in the society who said that people earning $30,000 per month, they have to pay mortgage and tax, but they don't receive much benefits. They are considered poor middle class. Now, the government tried to encourage childbirth. When this group of poor middle class have children, they will be faced with even greater burden. I suggest that the child allowance be raised to $150,000. And for taxpayers, no matter how many children they have, the child allowance should be applicable to them. Say, for the first child of the taxpayer, that could be an amount, and for each of the child after the first child, there could be some progressive arrangement. There is great cost to raise a child. They have to buy milk powder. They have to send their children to kindergarten. The government can consider adopting child allowance or newborn child bonus to 3 years so that taxpayers can enjoy tax allowance for 3 years after the children are born. Now, the after-school program only applies to grassroots families with means-tested arrangement, but for poor middle class whose both parents work, it's difficult for them to take care of their children. But because of their living environment, it's difficult for them to hire foreign domestic helper. There is insufficient childcare services in the community. According to 2021 statistics, for childcare services in Tai Po, for children aged under 2, the ratio is about 1 to 271 between children and the population. And it's 1 to 99 for Wong Tai Sin. The situation is not ideal. I hope that the government will enhance childcare service in community and support households that are not in low-income level. I so speak in support of the motion. I now suspend the meeting until 9 a.m. tomorrow.